How's it rockin', Dween Nation? This is the Dween Sports Podcast. We're about to get underway. But before we do, we'd love if you could like, comment, subscribe, or share. We are posting weekly sports content, and we want to build up the brand that is Dween Sports. Thank you all, and enjoy.
Welcome in, Dween Nation. This is your host, Justin Paez, alongside Genoa Agudelo. And today is a special episode because head coaches have been hired. Not all of them, but two big names are off the board. And we're going to discuss what it means to the team they are joining, what it means to the team they are leaving, how it affects everything going forward, and how we like it. Do we like the hire? Do we think it's great? Do we think it's awful? We are excited to discuss those two hires, Ben Johnson, Aaron Glenn. They leave the Lions. They head to the Jets and Bears, respectively. We will discuss it all. But before we do, how you doing, Genoa?
Yo, Dween Nation, doing good, Justin. And I think these teams are doing just as good, right? These guys that we're going about to talk about, because they got their next head coach, and a lot of these divisions, not Super Bowls, but mostly divisions, are possibly won this time of year, Justin. If you're not in the playoffs, right? Like if you didn't make the playoffs this year, bottom team in the division, you fired your head coach. You're looking good in the future. You get your head coach right now, and you're in step one to making the playoffs next year, and it's exciting.
Yeah, man. I mean, if you look at it right off the bat, you got a team that's in the playoffs right now, and the Commanders, they hired their coach around this time last year, Dan Quinn. And now look where they are. Same with Jim Harbaugh with the Chargers. And I know they lost in the first round, but from worst to into the playoffs. So there's multiple examples. D'Amico Ryans, 2 years ago. I could go on and on. So these moves, they can change your team for 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. If you're, Belichick, if they're the Belichicks or the Andy Reids of the world, decades kind of thing. So, or Mike Tomlin's too. So there's so many great coaches. There's also a lot of fails, Frank Reich and Antonio Pierce and all others. So we're excited though to discuss these two guys. And we're going to start off the bat with the most recent one being Aaron Glenn. He got hired today by the New York Jets, the new head coach of the Jets. He used to play there, was a former first-round pick for the Jets in the 90s, and as of recent has been the defensive coordinator for the Lions through this great little era that the Lions had, the greatest era, you would have to argue, for the Lions ever, which is unfortunate because they haven't made Super Bowl, but still a really good era. This year he did a really good job because he lost a lot of pieces on that defense and was still able to have an above average defense. But yeah, he is the Jets' new head coach. Obviously, they had Robert Saleh. They fired him. They had Jeff Ulbrich as the interim all year. He's gone. But what do you think about the hire? You're happy with it? What are the thoughts?
Well, Justin, I feel like with this hire, it's a little underwhelming as far as the Jets organization go. I feel like I would have liked to see Aaron Glenn in Las Vegas or in New Orleans there.
Yeah.
And not to mention, the last time we saw Aaron Glenn's defense, they were getting 45 points hung on them. Obviously, one of those touchdowns was a pick six by Jared Goff. But I feel like, yes, maybe he went back for old time's sake. He was a former player. I think he was a former safety, right, or
Yeah.
corner.
Yes.
Um,
Second.
and I just feel like he would have just been better off. I think his future would be better off in New Orleans there because they have that defensive pedigree. They're going to be picking top 5 or 6 for a new quarterback. With the Jets, it's a little bit of a dumpster fire. I mean, does Garrett Wilson win out? I mean, Aaron Rodgers seem to be rather retired, or I mean, a 1 year rental for another team. Devontae Adams could be following him out the door. I mean, maybe if that happens, they might just do a fire sale and even add, Brees Hall to the trading blocks, even after, just drafting him a few years ago. And it's just, I mean, honestly, I wouldn't mind bringing Aaron Rodgers back. Now, I want to let Dween Nation know, Aaron Rodgers used to be one of my favorite quarterbacks, even over Tom. And ever since his last couple years in Green Bay, he's just been a diva. And even in New York, he's just still a diva. And he just doesn't know when to just shut his mouth and learn how to be a quarterback. I mean, he is one of the oldest players in all of pro football, and he acts like the youngest. It's just, I mean, I wanted to work with Aaron Rodgers so bad, especially New York. He's got Garrett Wilson. He's got Devontae Adams. I mean, you got the best receiving corps in that division. And the Dolphins have Tyreek Hill. So it's like, I mean, come on, So if they can bring it back together, string it together, and have Aaron Rodgers. And you know what, Justin? I know Rodgers been through this before, but even draft a quarterback the second or third round. You're right. You don't have to do it the first, like Green Bay did with Jordan Love. just get a quarterback, draft him. You also have Jordan Travis there, former Florida State quarterback who's recovering from an ACL injury almost 2 years ago now. And it's like, maybe they should go that route and just, have a new system where they run the football, right? Like Aaron Glenn, you're from Detroit, right? Y'all had a 2-system running back. You got Brees Hall there, and you got Braylon Allen. So let's do something there. You got a speedster. You got a power back. I mean, you can make the argument that Brees Hall could be potentially better than Montgomery. I don't think obviously Braylon Allen's nowhere near Gibbs, but hey, you can use what you have and maybe get a running back in the draft if you're not, fully satisfied with Braylon Allen, but something along the lines, right? And then get yourself a tight end, right? Tyler Conklin is going to help things out. So I would say for Aaron Glenn and this Jets organization, for them to make a playoff for next year, I would say keep Rodgers on a year deal, but also draft his backup, develop Jordan Travis as well, and see what you got going on from there. Keep Devontae, keep Garrett Wilson, and then you're able to develop this defense. This defense isn't all too bad. They're able to get to the pass rush bear. I like Quinnen Williams and such. And then you got Sauce Gardner there. So it's just add offense to keep this offense together for one more year, develop a quarterback. I think Aaron Glenn should be okay to run in that division.
Yeah, this hire to me, it shows to me. Okay, let's refresh. The Jets roster as a whole to me is in a win now mode. You have just so many pieces. You have an older Devontae Adams, and you got a defense that they're still on rookie contracts and they're about to start needing to be paid, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So Aaron Glenn to me is a win now hire for the Jets. It's not an A plus. I give it a B plus kind of grade. I think it's very solid. I'm really interested because we are a fantasy sports show. Who do they hire at the offensive coordinator position? Because Aaron Glenn's a defensive guy. Who is the guy that is going to be leading the offense? Because the offense has been the biggest issue. The defense had been very good over the last couple of years. This year was more of a struggle after losing or getting rid of Robert Saleh, but the defense was always their strong point. They missed that offensive piece. And will Aaron Rodgers be around? That is a question heading into the offseason. I do think he will stay. There is already a rumor out after Glenn's hire that he wants Aaron Rodgers around to be a quarterback there. But I think that Aaron Rodgers, obviously at his age, has lost a step, maybe a handful of steps from that skill that he had in his MVP years and before that. So I think that he will be brought back. It's not my favorite move, but also I've been looking into just quarterbacks this offseason in free agency and in the draft. And based on where the Jets are, I know they're at 7. They're not even that, low. I think that it's going to be hard for them to find their next franchise guy this season. There's no real free agents besides Sam Darnold, but Sam Darnold's not a franchise quarterback to me. I think he's still in that bridge quarterback discussion. And then as for those rookies, they're none of them are super exciting. And the ones that even are a little exciting, Cam Ward, Shador Sanders, maybe Jalen Milroe, or even Dylan Gabriel or Jackson Dart. I think those top 3, Milroe, Sanders, and Ward, will go before the Jets have the opportunity to pick. That'd be my take on it. But yeah, go give me your thoughts.
I first of all, I was actually thinking that maybe the Jets could trade, but before I even get to that part, I actually like this Jalen Milroe idea. Justin, I actually think it's going to take a little bit for Jalen Milroe's name to be called. However, I think a couple weeks before the draft, this happens every year, someone's stock just rises suddenly, randomly. It's like, oh, and it happened most recently with AR.
Right.
And I remember it was like, no one was talking about AR. It was Bryce Young for sure, and then CJ Stroud. And it was like all of a sudden, oh man, I remember there was a couple offensive linemen even projected. But anyways, I feel like the Jets could go the Jalen Milroe route, right? They can wait 7. I think Milroe falls to 7. I think he falls to 7. But Justin also, I mean, is Tennessee and Cleveland, are both those teams really, looking to get a quarterback? I mean, come on now. I don't think they're really sold. Because I felt last year that Chicago was ready to make a trade up or no, they already had the first pick last year. They were already saying we're done with Fields, right? And then the year before, and even like a couple years ago when it was Kyler coming out of Oklahoma, I remember Arizona had the first pick and they had Josh Rosen on the roster. They were like, "No, we're getting Kyler." And even like Jacksonville a couple years ago, they were like, "We're getting Lawrence." So it's like we're getting Trevor. So it's like, I mean, I feel like these teams, they don't have any buzz. It's like, they're not really decided yet. Like Cleveland, it's like, like we're paying Deshaun. We might have to get rid of him. He might not play. We might keep Jameis. We don't know what we want to do. And then Tennessee's like, I don't know. I don't really know if they really want a quarterback. Like they might want to run it back one more year with Will Levis, maybe get him like another receiver. Since they traded Hopkins and they want to pair him. I don't know. Who knows what Tennessee wants to do? They don't have really any buzz. So why not the Jets trade up and I don't know, get Cam Ward?
Yeah, I was looking more into this top part of the draft, and what makes it tough for me with this Jets team is there are 4 quarterback. Like they need a quarterback very badly.
Yeah.
You got the Titans, you got the Browns, you got the Giants, and you got the Raiders all above the Jets trying to make this pick. That's what I think makes it tough for New York to get their guy, and that's why I think they will bring back Aaron Rodgers, and maybe they can do a second round pick on Dylan Gabriel or Jackson Dart or Kyle McCord. I don't know. There's some of those like middle tier quarterbacks that they could scoop up and see what they have. I know they have Jordan Travis, and I think they have Tyron Taylor still on this roster.
Yeah.
But yeah, I as going back to just the hire in general, to see the effects to me on Garrett Wilson, Brees Hall, Aaron Rodgers, Devontae Adams, Conklin, and fantasy heading into next year, let's wait and find that offensive coordinator, that offensive mind that Aaron Glenn decides to bring in to his staff, because that could change a lot of different things. But as for the hire itself, I have a very happy overall look at it. B+, thumbs up. Let's move to hire number 2. The other coordinator in Detroit is now headed to the Chicago Bears, Ben Johnson. The offensive guru is now teaming up with Caleb Williams, and I couldn't be more happy with this combination, this pairing. There was rumblings of this months ago that, hey, he might be interested in the Bears, and you thought, in division, does he really want to do that? But to me, that rumor never really went away. And so he gets this opportunity now. He's going to have a number 1 overall pick to work with. He's got Swift, who's worked with in the past, DJ Moore, Roma Dunze. They could bring back Keenan Allen. You got Cole Kmet. You got a average offensive line, and then you have a very solid defense. So I think the Bears really are just missing a head coach, and they got one. They got one. This is the number 1 coach in the cycle. If you listened to our episode last week, when we did predictions for this might be my only one I get correct, but I had Ben Johnson go to the Bears because I think this is a really good pairing. And there's already some rivalry, some brewed tension, which I love because there's going to be kind of extra motivation in the division. He's got the Lions. He even spoke about loving to beat up on the Packers and Matt LaFleur. But yeah, I love this hire. I'll dig into it more, but give me your take.
Justin, I absolutely love this, and especially fantasy football, right?
Yes.
And one of our main leagues there, I had drafted Caleb Williams, I think in the 11th or 10th round. At the time, I was feeling really, it might have been 12. I was feeling really good about it because I had already gotten Jordan Love. I had my starting lineup. But I think this is a year, going into this year, I probably should think of redoing that again, maybe over Jordan Love perhaps. And here's the thing, Justin. I saw some things out of Caleb Williams that, you know what, I think is going to work out, right? And he was able to do some really good things with the previous head coach. Well, we're not going to say his name anymore because it's weird to say. And he's gone from Chicago. And that guy was a fantasy football killer. But regardless there, Justin, I like it because, look, even if you don't bring back Keenan Allen, who I think's a free agent, but if not, even better because he stays with them for another year, you still got Roma Dunze who's going to break out. He's going to have a Jackson Smith and Jigba kind of break out like Jackson Smith did this year. And then you got DJ Moore, who's always going to be good. But then, Justin, this guy, Ben Johnson, was able to develop Sam Laporta. And I've always been a fan of Cole Kmet. And I've always given Cole Kmet the benefit of the doubt there because he's had really bad head coaches. And then Justin Fields was always kind of, really good rusher, not really throwing it. Also, that other guy, the head coach, was there for, Justin Fields and Caleb Love. So it's like, you know what? I kind of like Cole Kmet as a deep sleeper next year in fantasy because, we kind of look that way as Laporta, right? Like even no one drafted Laporta in that year, in 2023, right? We all got him like week 1 free agency, right? Or maybe like right after the draft, whatever time at the time was hurt. And I feel like Cole Kmet's going to be a guy that's going to be developed. Not to mention, you mentioned the running backs. They had a, kind of double-headed thing there in Detroit. Now they can, have Swift, who might have crossed paths with Ben Johnson there. Maybe I think
think
might
so.
have been Campbell's first year with Detroit where they had Swift and Jamal Williams. So I think they might have crossed paths. So there should be a little bit of ties there, familiarity with each other, and not to mention that they also have a couple running backs like Roshan Johnson that could develop. Obviously, Herbert got traded to Cincinnati, so maybe they might develop another running back there. And so it's very interesting, though. But I think Caleb Williams now becomes a premier passer. And Justin, you know what? You and I were together this past Thanksgiving. We watched Bears and Lions. I'm thinking they run it back. Detroit, Bears and Lions, part 2. You get Ben Johnson returns and make that the first matchup of the year, right? Obviously, the Bears and Lions play each other twice a year. Make the Bears and Lions meet up, late in the season. Maybe the last week of the season because all divisions play each other. But Justin, now I would like to see this rematch with, when we saw each other, it was that other guy's head coach not calling a timeout and they lost by 3.
Yeah.
But then now Ben Johnson returns to Detroit as his franchise quarterback, has his playmakers going against Campbell. Not to mention Amon-Ra St. Brown had some things to say today about his former coordinator. So that would be an interesting matchup. So hey, NFL, book that for Thanksgiving, Bears at Lions.
Yeah, I think that rivalry now is going to be set up for years and years.
This division too.
Yeah, this entire division. I agree. You got a young guy in J.J. McCarthy, who I think is going to be good next year for Minnesota. And Kevin O'Connell knows how to develop quarterbacks. And then you got Jordan Love and Matt LaFleur. And then you got the Lions, who I know they're losing these 2 coordinators, but I still think that with Dan Campbell at the lead and all those good pieces on offense and on defense, that they're still going to be in a good spot moving forward. I have an interesting hypothetical that I think could happen, and I was putting my head toward it more today. And through the draft, a lot of people are projecting Ashton Genty to go to the Dallas Cowboys. He spoke about always being a Cowboys fan, and they very much need a running back. But what if Ben Johnson goes, man, I could really pair up DeAndre Swift, who I can't rely on him alone, and Roshan Johnson, he's a little meh. Let's get Ashton Genty in here and fully complete this offense to be a juggernaut of an offense for years and years to come.
Justin, I would absolutely love that. From the moment you started, the moment you said Genty, and we're already on the subject of the Bears, I already knew where you were going, and I absolutely love it. Not to mention, a couple years ago, the Lions did, draft Jahmyr Gibbs in the first round with the 12th pick overall. They already had Montgomery, and it kind of resembles everything, right? Because Roshan Johnson is kind of a replica of Craig Reynolds, the third string running back.
Yeah.
And then, Jahmyr Gibbs is one of my favorite players in the league, but I would say Swift has the speed, but Genty can also have that speed as well, like Gibbs, but the powerness, the power of David Montgomery. And he can be a bell cow as well. So I definitely love it. And then you know what, Justin, it's beautiful because then they don't have to pick offensive line, and then the best offensive line can later in the draft for my Texans, and so
Right.
Yeah, right. And so, but then they can definitely get some offensive linemen though mid draft, get some defensive pieces there. Their defense is nice. Justin, one team from the NFC North has to be in the NFC Championship next year. Has to be.
Yeah.
Got to be.
Now, the thing, too, is that it didn't happen this year, but every year there is a worst to first or easily worst to playoffs. And I think the Bears have that kind of on lock from worst in their division to a playoff team. I think that is almost signed, sealed, delivered, I would say. And I don't know if that's an overreaction, but with, the Vikings now having their rookie quarterback who could hit, could miss, could be okay. You never know. That team will be worse than 14-3. And then the Packers, I expect to improve, but the Lions, who have been on the top of the division for 2 years, I think they will go down now with the 2 coordinators leaving. So that gives way for Chicago to make their name and have a second year of Caleb Williams with that offensive mind. We saw that, Patrick Mahomes has an offensive-minded coach, and they are the best team in football.
Yeah.
So I think that at Ben Johnson and Chicago, this is a match made in heaven for fantasy managers as well. I mean, Caleb Williams to me is now a quarterback 1, a top 12 guy for sure. I pick him over CJ. I pick him over
Kyler.
I pick everybody over Kyler almost, but definitely over Kyler.
Brock Purdy,
Over Tua, Purdy, yes, even over Bo Nix or Sam
Herbert.
Darnold. Over Herbert, yeah, for
Okay,
sure.
wow, yeah, I'm gonna agree with you. Jordan Love.
Yes, over Jordan Love too.
Okay, okay,
I
okay.
think the line might stop at like I don't even know, but
Like
let me
let's see,
see.
like obviously not obviously Burrow, Lamar, Allen, Hurts, maybe Stroud, maybe Mahomes has a better fantasy season.
I would rather have Caleb Williams. I would rather have Caleb
Okay,
Williams. I think the
understand.
only ones that Lamar, Burrow, as you mentioned, Josh Allen, Jaden Daniels, Jalen Hurts, and maybe Baker Mayfield. Uh,
Ooh, okay.
but I think
I
the
think I like I think I like Caleb Williams better than Baker next year because I think that maybe this Bears team can kind of be like the Rams of 2017 where they kind of just are in shootouts, new coordinator coach on the block. And I did see his press conference. I like his enthusiasm. I like his attitude. And I feel like he actually can lead him. We really never heard him talk much, right, as a coordinator. So we actually heard more from Aaron Glenn. So it's a good hire. Love it.
Yeah, and speaking of that, just to because there's a little bit more coaching news, um, but Liam Coen, the Tampa Bay Bucks
Oh yeah,
coordinator, we thought he was headed for head coaching destinies, and he would have if he wanted to, I think.
yeah,
But he is staying in Tampa Bay to be one of the highest paid offensive coordinators, and that is good news for Tampa Bay. Very good
yeah,
news to me. It keeps Bucky Irving, Baker Mayfield, Mike Evans, Cade Otton, and Happy Land for me. Those are guys I'm still going to pick next year.
yeah.
But yeah, that's kind of a cap off news that I think. What are your thoughts now that Liam Cohen is staying in Tampa, not going to Jacksonville because that was the one place he was designated to go to?
I think he was really close with the general manager for the Jags, but Jags actually went parted their ways with
That's
their
right.
GM today, and I think that kind of threw him off a little bit. And I think at that point he was like, you know what, I don't want to go through all this as my first head coaching gig. Let me just stay another year at a contending team. We can win division. We'll see what's out there next year. And I think that's probably what his thought was.
No.
Or Justin, maybe Vegas is on the other line, or New Orleans is on the other line. Or like, hey man, you know. And so obviously, honestly, I think he does stay. I think they said that he is going to stay, but you never know, right? Maybe
Yeah.
Vegas throws some money on him. But now that Aaron Glenn and Johnson are now off the board, who knows what these other teams are now looking to get. And so I don't know. I don't know. I like it for Bucky Irving's sake, because now we can feel good about drafting him next year. But hey, better for me, right? I'm a Texans fan, so I don't want those Jacks to be good.
That's true. That's true. And one more thing, going back to Ben Johnson a little. We talked enough about the Bears. We talked now a little bit about the Buccaneers. We talked about the Jets. Let's talk about the team that those two coordinators are leaving for head coaching jobs. The Detroit Lions. What is your? This is kind of a fantasy scope on it, and give me your take on the Lions next year. But what is the thoughts on Jared Goff for fantasy? Amon Ra, Jameer, David Montgomery, Sam Laporta, Jameson Williams. Big names. What do you think?
Justin, the biggest concern is kind of like what we saw in San Francisco this year, right? All year in 2023, San Francisco was shootouts, right? McCaffrey was unbelievable. Purdy was, putting up stats. Ayuk, one of the best fantasy receivers. And then this year they get an injury bug, a little bit of, internal, team chemistry falling apart. Not saying I think this Lions team's united together. We got to remember this team was grinding all year. Like they were scoring, they were hustling, and this was the year they were the hungriest, right? And it's just like I feel like next year could be a possible regress. Like we see it with all-star players. I think they could remain, definitely in the division. It's such a tough division. That's another thing, Justin. Maybe if they were in the NFC South, right? Maybe I'd love the Lions, right? But it's like Jameer Gibbs, right? This is another thing. Jameer Gibbs ended the season so strongly. He was unbelievable. The division round, he was sensational. I mean, he's the one guy that gets a pass. I mean, Amon Ra had a great game too, but literally Gibbs made plays, week in and week out the last 8 weeks of the season, right? He was really solid. Can he replicate that this upcoming year? Also, Montgomery had a little bit of an injury. They kind of threw him in this game in the divisional round. I mean, how is that going to linger? It was a knee injury, and kind of think it was like an MCL or something like that. Is that going to linger? Not to mention that we do get Hutchinson back on the defensive line, but it's like, when is he going to play? Like he might not play half the season, and it's like I don't know. We got it. We'll see what Dan Campbell is made of. Only time will tell.
Yeah. Yeah, but with the changes, because the Lions players, Jameer Gibbs and Amon-Ra, to be specific, they're going in the first round projected in fantasy drafts.
Oh yeah,
Is that for sure still? That doesn't change with
yeah, you got to. Yeah, you can't risk it. You got to if you're drafting like 5 or 6 and you still see a Gibbs because Jamar, Saquon, Derrick Henry, Jefferson is on. You got like 5 or 6. Bijan is gone as well. Then you got to go with you got to
Yeah,
But yeah,
I agree. I agree. Definitely Gibbs. I think Amon-Ra could slide a little bit. Like I might go CD over him, or
yeah.
maybe
Oh
definitely
yeah, CD too.
Nico. But he's still in the top 10. Should still be in your first round of drafts
Yeah,
if you were curious. Jared Goff, I though think falls back into like the streamer quarterback 2 range. He was a QB1 this year.
yeah.
But Laporta, I think, should still be top 5 to 7, 4 to
He'll have a
7.
bounce. He'll have a bounce back season.
But yeah, so those are our thoughts, though. Those are only 2 hires in. There's more to come and more to discuss when we see the hires of Vegas, New Orleans,
Dallas.
Dallas. Oh my God, I can't wait. Jacksonville will be good. But yeah, there's still a lot to come. Thank you guys for listening to this episode. That was a lot of fun to just kind of discuss through each, because those things will happen. Those changes will occur just due to one person being in the building or one person being out of the building.
Yeah.
But yeah, crazy stuff. Thank you guys for listening. And Genoa, send us out.
Yo, Dween Nations. This was our thoughts on all the news going around the NFL with coaching. So thank you guys for watching. We love you guys. And go ahead and check out our previous episode talking about these championship games that are on this weekend, where we figure out who are the last 2 teams that will meet up in New Orleans at the Superdome there. So excited. Hopefully it's the Eagles, not the Chiefs, or it could be the Bills, or the Commanders can make history. Who knows? Check us out for more. We love you guys. Dween Nation, you rock. And as always, peace.